Welcome back, class. Welcome to PNYC. Today we will be seeing the second chapter of the syllabus in Science 2, that is living organisms and certain life processes, part 1. So to begin with, this chapter is broadly divided into these three major four categories that we are going to look up to. So the first one is your life processes. They are living organisms. We are studying them. Let them be unicellular or multicellular. Let them be prokaryotic or eukaryotic. Since they are living, they will have certain processes which we are going to study. So that states your first point, that is life processes. The second point is about energy production. So you know, to perform any process, even now I'm teaching, I'm talking to you. So I'm spending energy, right? I'm talking to you. These tube lights and fans are working out here. You need energy to make that function. Similarly, organisms also need energy to be produced and subsequently be stored for further usage. Then the third point is nutrients required and the energy efficiency that these various nutrients or molecules have in these pathways. And the fourth and an important point is your cell division, which is of two major types. Somatic cells usually show mitosis, and then there is complex cell division, also known as meiosis. Okay, the details of which we'll be seeing when we come to that point in the chapter. So, to begin with, tell me, what do you understand by life processes? So, life processes are anything that has to do with the functionality of a living being. I am here, I am standing in front of you talking. So, this is a life process I am doing right now. I am breathing. So, digestion, assimilation, excretion, everything is a life process, including your sleep and certain other things that you do in your daily life in order to function normally. So all of it comes under life processes. Now, why are we studying life processes? Now, here it is, of course, from your biology point of view, we have to understand with a major emphasis on the energy production, the way in which energy is obtained. Like what energy source is the best or what energy source will be utilized well. So it is with reference to the energy and the turnover kinetics that we are studying. So all of your life processes, let it be digestion, respiration, excretion, absorption, circulation, all of them have a certain role to play and they are indispensable. So one cannot take over the other. Tomorrow if I say, for instance, let my circulatory system go to sleep because I'm just sleeping. Is that possible? That's absolutely insane to say. So if there is no circulatory system, then no blood flow, you'll be completely shut down. Isn't it? So the circulatory system is the most important. Now, if we just keep that pathway active, that is the circulatory system, and then we say that no, I will go on a fast, I will not eat food. Anyway, the circulatory system is working. Why do I need to eat and do other things? That is again, disastrous. If you don't eat, where will you get your energy from? You're not autotrophic, you're not autotrophic, right? We are not plants. So, all of us require energy production, energy synthesis, and ultimately energy utilization for these life processes. So take it from simple organisms which are unicellular like bacteria, which could be chemoheterotrophic or autotrophic if you have got unicellular algae, right? Or Chlamydomonas. Chlamydomonas is an exceptional organism because it behaves like an algae, also the parasite and the bacteria. So any of these do require, or rather all of these do require energy production and they do have certain life processes. Now, in a unicellular organism, the circulatory system will be, absent or it won't be required. It is just a single cell, so it is simple absorption, exocytosis, endocytosis and pinocytosis, the exocytosis. So the waste product will be simply passively going out or they will be ejected from the cell in the form of a bolus or certain site-wise bodies like these livers. But when it comes to higher organisms like plants, animals, then even the lower forms of eukaryotic organisms like you have got your sponges. So all of them have got a definitive system for each of them. That we'll see when we classify animals. That is also very interesting chapter from the taxonomy point of view in zoology that we'll be studying, but that comes later. So ultimately what I mean to say is all of these processes which include your digestion, respiration, energy metabolism, all of them fall under this blanket term of life processes, which is very much important. Now, I said that there is requirement of energy. Where does this energy come from? If you were a plant, it would come from sunlight and carbon dioxide. And at night, since plant respire, it would be oxygen, right? So it has to come out from certain sources. They are either organic or inorganic. In case of auxotrophs or autotrophs, as we call them, or the primary producers, plants, herbs, anything that's green out there on the planet, it is capable of doing this process called as photosynthesis. So any organism that does photosynthesize is capable of generating energy from certain inorganic sources. And of course, it can by default derivatize it from organic sources as well, like simple or complex sugars. When we culture plants in the lab, when we do plant tissue culture, now that is something which I'll be introducing to you in the chapter on biotech and cell biology as an application. So then you feed glucose to the cells because you want them to rapidly grow and form calli. Okay, we'll come to it in that chapter. So unless the organism is autotrophic, it will need certain compounds and chemicals to study. So we are what? We are chemoheterotrophic, which means we depend on other sources. We are heterotrophic, first of all, that justifies that we cannot make our own food. Humans cannot make their own food, or any animal for that matter. So we rely on other sources. So we usually are vegetarians, or say we have a mixed diet, so we rely on other sources of food, let them be veg or non-veg. But certain animals like carnivores, you'll never see them grazing, you'll never see them eating grass. Whereas herbivores, in the ecology triangle which form the base level organisms, they will graze and munch on leaves, grasses, trees. This is how they will derivatize their energy. Now, energy is contained in the form of three major compounds. What are they? It is your carbohydrates. I am writing it as carbs. Then you have got your proteins. And then you have got your fats or lipids as they are called. So, this term over here, energy efficiency, it is of utmost importance with the reference to these three compounds that I am talking. So, the energy efficiencies will go on increasing from top to bottom. So, the energy efficiency of carb, or rather I put it the other way, of fats or lipids will be maximum as compared to proteins, and proteins will be maximum as compared to carbs. So in short, whenever there is breakdown of these sources, the amount of energies that you will get are in this order: fats being maximum, fats higher than proteins, higher than your carbohydrates or sugars. So these include your sugars, simple carbohydrates, and complex carbohydrates like starch. So fats and lipids will give you maximum energy, kilocalories as is the unit of measurement, followed by proteins and followed by carbs. But here, this is slightly extra that I am trying to tell you. But whenever you are starving, whenever you fast, so your body will first start utilize the readily available sources of energy. Now, what do I mean by readily available sources of energy? They are nothing but these carbs or simple sugars. So whenever you see if you are suffering from loose motions or diarrhea or dysentery, and you are suffering from severe dehydration, what do you get? What is the first medication that you take? It's ORS, right? The oral formulation. It contains your sodium and potassium ions and some glucose. Electrol powder, the ready-made sachet that you get, which you just have to formulate in 1 liter of water. So that is going to take up your ionic balance and also give you the sugar that is a readily available or metabolizable source. So sugars are immediately absorbed. Like it starts as early as it has blood vesicles around you. So even if you keep sugars in your mouth for a long time, will it get absorbed? The answer is yes. Because your buccal cavity has got a network of capillaries which are permeable. The skin is a permeable barrier, right? It is not impermeable. It is permeable to solutes and certain other things. So carbohydrates during starvation or energy requirement are going to be utilized the first, followed by your proteins, and ultimately there will be lipids or fats that are utilized. So what are the consequences of this? So when carbs are utilized, there are various energy storage houses in different organisms. So usually the animals or mammals store starches in the form of glycogen. Okay, so that is nothing but your complex starch in a condensed matter, semi-solid clay consistency. So that is nothing but glycogen. So certain other organisms and plants store it as amylase or amylose as it is called. And higher plants, woody species, terrestrial people that we see around, they store starch in the form of amylase, of course, and also in the form of cellulose, which is a much more complex carbohydrate as compared to your simple starch. So that is about the energy efficiency that we will see when different sources are utilized based on your need. Then coming to what nutrients to eat. Okay, so these three are the nutrients. So where all from can you derive your nutrients? Class, tell me. What are you eat to survive? Let it be your morning milk or tea, coffee, whatever you have. Then followed by a breakfast, your which includes confectionery products like breads, pastries. If you follow Western diet, because we are largely influenced, that's causing a lot of bad to your health though. But otherwise, initially, what do you have? Like it's chapati and tea, chapati, bhakri, roti, whatever if you want to have it, and then you have the full meal or the thali that we have. So in that you have got the dal, then you have got the sabzi, the salad, the pickle, so everything. So it's a complete diet where you get all the essential nutrients that you have food at home. Or this is the way in which it should be having the business outside. So that diet includes your cereals and pulses, which is a very good source of your proteins and vitamins. Then the carbs come from the major portion of the meal. Now, depending on what state you come from or the way in which your family has got the eating habits, you will be, if you're from Maharashtra, obviously you'll have a balanced diet of chapatis and rice. That is bhat and puri as we call it, or bhakri. But if you are from the south, you'll have a more fondness towards rice. So you eat more of that, and then you'll have all the varieties. So these two major products, which form a staple in most parts of India. If you go to the north, you'll have less rice and more of the wheat products. So they supply your major carbs in the diet, right? After that comes your vegetable. So vegetable is a mix of all depending on what vegetable you eat. Now potatoes, favorite of all age groups, though we imported from Spain long ago. The Britishers did it, of course. So that has got a huge amount of starch. So it is again to supply you carbs. It is comparatively less in vitamins and proteins, but otherwise it's going to give you starch. If you have something like moong or chana or chole, so that's going to give you more of protein as well. So depending on what food you have, you will get the respective amounts of nutrients, let it be starch, or your proteins, or your fats. Now, when in our Marathi families, we have, or even in other families, nothing exclusive to the Marathi sect, we eat two more and one, right? So the tube that we add, the ghee or the clarified butter as we call in English, is nothing but your fat. Fats are also essential. Though the body can synthesize fat by the de novo pathway or the other pathways that lead to fat production, still externally eating fat is known to be advantageous and helpful and also beneficial. So that accounts to your fat intake and the energy efficiency is what I already told. So maximum kilocalories will be obtained by your fats, followed by your proteins and your carbohydrates. Then why do we do all this? Okay, we are eating food, we are having energy production, we are synthesizing energy. What is this for? So this is for us to live, survive and propagate, right? So propagation means division. Essentially the fundamental concept underlying here is your cell division. If your cells don't divide, you won't be able to reproduce. Rather, you won't be able to survive. You know how much amount of skin we shed every day, how much amount of cells are born, are lost in our day-to-day lives. You don't see them growing, being washed off or being blown off, as you see in certain sci-fi movies. But a lot of your sanctified epithelium is being lost every day. Or take this simple example. If some of you is into sports, or rather some of you are into sports, or rather played, all of us have played at some point of time inside. You know how much amount of bruises and cuts we get? Don't we? So at that time, you need to kill the wounds, right? Where and how will you heal these wounds? The energy will come from the food you eat. The body will try and heal it, right? So tomorrow if I have a cut over here, If I am say chopping my veggies and I get a cut. So I'll bleed for some time and then the bleeding will stop. Okay. But the cut will be there. It will take a week's time to heal. So how does the cell on one side know that it has to match up with the cell on the other side? So that is again a complex thing, that is cell signaling or cell communication that takes place. And of course, energy is invested into it. And then if you starve, the healing process will be delayed. So that is why you eat nutrient-rich foods, right? So whenever you're not well, just as I gave you the examples of dysentery and diarrhea or loose motions, so you are given electrolyte solutions. Why is that? So that is to make up for the losses that your body has incurred so far. So this is about the four major points with some briefings about them. And then one more point I had to tell you about energy production is essentially when we deal with energetics, it has to do something with your metabolism. Now, what is this term metabolism? So, metabolism is nothing but your energy utilization and energy production. In simple terms, understand that it is your energy turnover kinetics. So energy will have to be produced and it will have to be utilized. So both the things go hand in hand, right? You cannot exhaust a certain thing. If you are using your mobile phones to watch this YouTube video, you have to charge it after some time, right? So that energy comes from somewhere and then that stored energy is being utilized, isn't it? Similarly is what our bodies do. So metabolism is a term comprising of these two terms, that is catabolism and anabolism. So catabolism plus anabolism lead to what we call as metabolism. So metabolism is the sum of catabolism and anabolism. Catabolic processes or catabolism in simple terms are nothing but breakdown of your complex substances into simple utilizable sources. What do I mean by that? It's as simple as your breaking down of starch or fat hydrolysis. The simple experiment all of you must have done. If you chew a piece of starch-rich food like chapati or bhakri for long, you get this sweet feeling in your mouth, right? Now that is because amylase is an enzyme which is present in your saliva, which is breaking down this starch into simple sugars, which are nothing but your glucose. So this glucose is giving you the taste buds, the sweet reception for taste. Now this is known as catabolism. So complex things are being broken down. The examples are your starch hydrolysis and fatty acid hydrolysis. Now anabolism is exactly the opposite of this. So whenever you are going to remember this, to the point even I had a confusion regarding these two. So what I advise my students is remember one of the sides perfectly. So the opposite of it is the other thing. So remember the LHS or the RHS. So if you remember catabolism, remember it perfectly from top to end. If you remember anabolism, remember it that way. So anabolism is synthesis of starch or fatty acid. So complex things are being made up. So you're synthesizing. You gym, you work out, you're building up muscle. That is like anabolism. Then you fast or you survive, you waste the muscle, you consume the muscle. So that is catabolism. So anabolism, the examples of this is your de novo fatty acid synthesis path. This is just an example. Remember if you can. It is higher order studies, not in your scope of your 10th standard for now. But I've just quoted it as an example. You can write it if you are. If a question is posed regarding this might be helpful. You can give this as an example. And an important thing about energy kinetics is in catabolism, your potential energy is being converted into kinetic energy, which means it is being converted into a utilizable source. Isn't that the theme? You are breaking down complex things into utilizable sources. That is glucose. So, potential energy. Potential energy was there in what? Your chapati or bhakri. Now you are eating it. Your amylase in saliva is acting on it. Even in your stomach, your digestive juices and enzymes are going to act on it. So they are acting on it to break it down and make it utilizable, isn't it? So this is what you get your kinetic energy. I'm moving and writing on the board. I'm talking to you. So even right now, a lot of glucose in my body is being used up. Then when it comes to metabolism, now these processes are not like one after the other. Okay, guys. This is no mechanics. On machine you will give the feed and then it will produce and then there will be break and then it will give the raw products. No. These processes occur simultaneously in different compartments or different organs of the cell depending on the need. See, when you go in wars, when there is a war happening in a country or anywhere, so the soldiers are deployed onto the boundary, right? They are supposed to defend. Does it mean that there are no soldiers, new soldiers inland or within the country? No, they are there. If they are there, civilians go in over there to field. So this is what? This is an example of anabolism catabolism. We are utilizing and also synthesizing things. So both of these processes will be simultaneously going in the cell. This is the beauty of biology, and hence we call this as metabolism. So whenever you see people who are slightly, not slightly, what I mean to say is they look malnourished. They might not be. They might be very slim, trim, and then you just tease them with whatever names you can. So body shaping should never be done. So they are thin. No matter how much ever they eat, if they are vegetarians, even if they start eating non-veg, they don't put up weight. They look very slim, trim, and skinny. Because we say that BMR is high. What do you mean by BMR? BMR is a basic metabolic rate. So when BMR is high, when such people consume foods of any kind in any proportions, they find it very difficult to put on weight. Now, if you have got a low BMR, it means how much ever less you eat, your body is going to conserve that because you don't have high metabolism rate. So agreed that it won't be consumed, but it won't be produced first. So you tend to put on a lot of weight. So some people you see, when you invite them for, you meet with them outside, you see they're pretty plump and chubby. And then you think, oh, he will eat this much. He will order at least 2-3 dishes when we go to a restaurant. But that doesn't happen because they are physically appearing that way to be chubby and plump, but their diet is not so high as you might have expected. Now that is due to the low BMR. So this has got a lot of things to do with your physical well-being, mental well-being, everything. So your life processes ultimately affect your entire existence. Okay? Your entire existence as being what you are. Now, in this energy kinetics, we have these 3 major pathways or processes to which you are being introduced. That is glycolysis, respiration, that is utilization of glucose. So glucose is going to be oxidized to or rather converted to pyruvate. This pyruvate is going to enter the TCA cycle. TCA over here means tricarboxylic acid cycle or TCA pathway. So this was described by Sir Hans Krebs, for which he won the Nobel Prize. He was a 19th century scientist. There is a in-box highlight given in your textbooks about him. Please find it useful. So he was awarded Nobel for the discovery where he discovered the Krebs cycle goes on in the mitochondria. So it is essentially a mitochondrial process. Now this glycolysis is cytosolic. Okay. So this glycolysis is, I am writing CT over here. CT means cytosol. TCA cycle, it means it will happen in the mitochondria. I am writing mitochondria, okay, as a short form over here. And then ETC, it is also part of the mitochondria. Now this is part of the mitochondrial matrix. And this is the part of the mitochondrial membrane. So, 2 important processes, ultimate of which is energy production. You'll get something known as ATPs. So what are ATPs? ATPs are adenosine triphosphate molecules, which are highly energy-rich molecules that your body produces. So both of these important processes happen or occur in the mitochondria, which makes mitochondria indispensable for any cell to survive. Forget about the organism. So cells which have got less mitochondria are less energy efficient. So mitochondria is the cell organelle or cell organelle, as you want to call it, which is very much important for your normal cellular processes to take place. So let us see these 3 pathways in detail with their peculiarities, and then let us also move on to what different types of nutrient sources do we consume, and then ultimately we'll see how cell division also takes place. see the three major processes which I just told you about. So how will we go about them and what are they exactly and in what compartment of the cell do they take place? So the first one I told you is glycolysis. Glycolysis in short is nothing but your conversion of glucose to pyruvate. Ultimately acetyl-CoA is the molecule form and this acetyl-CoA which is a conjugate product of the acetyl group CH3CO. It is written like this. Just giving it here for your knowledge. Okay, so this is coenzyme A and this is the acetyl moiety that is present. So that is going to feed your TCA cycle or the Krebs cycle. So now TCA cycle is known as the tricarboxylic acid cycle because there are three carboxylic acids that are produced in the pathway. So in your syllabi, you have got certain flow diagrams given in the textbook. Now, due to time and space constraint, I'm preventing myself from writing them on the board, but they are very nicely given as a flowchart format in your textbooks. So please go through them. So how exactly it is a 2-3 step process wherein your glucose will be getting converted into pyruvate. Fine. Now this pyruvate acts as a feed to the TCA cycle. So what is the TCA cycle? Coenzyme A pyruvate, it will give you glucose 6-phosphate, fructose 6-phosphate, 1,6-biphosphate. Then you will have lysis of these two molecules. You'll get G3 glucose glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, dihydroxy 1-phosphate. It's a complete cycle. You can Google up. Your smart kids these days. The pathway won't be expected in your exam, but in general you should know what are the three carboxylic acids that are produced. So it is your alpha KGA, that is alpha glutarate, succinate, fumarate, malate, so on and so forth. The first one being citric acid. So since the first acid that was produced in this pathway was a tricarboxylic acid, this pathway is termed as your TCA pathway or tricarboxylic acid pathway. Since the first acid I told you was formed was citric acid. Citric acid has got three carboxylic groups to it. So hence we term it as TCA. And it was described, I told you, by Sir Hans Krebs. So it is also known as the Krebs cycle. So both the terms are synonymous, Krebs cycle or the TCA pathway. Then this occurs in the mitochondria. Now, the products from these act as a feed to the ETC. Now, what do I mean by ETC? ETC is your ultimate pathway which is going to give you energy. ETC is nothing but your electron transport chain. Now, so why do we call it electron transport chain? Because it is all your electrons and protons that are functional in a cyclic manner to give you energy in the form of ATP. What is ATP? I have shown here as a figure. So ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So adenine over here is your purine, it's your base. The sugar is your ribose sugar, and you have got three phosphate groups attached to it. So these three phosphate groups are attached with the phosphodiester linkage. Forget about the details that we'll see when they are required. What I want you people to understand over here is, whenever I say hydrolysis, okay, so what do I mean by ATP hydrolysis? So ATP is being hydrolyzed into ADP and IP. IP is nothing but your inorganic phosphate molecule. So it is a singular phosphate moiety which is falling off from the main molecule. So here, these three things I have told you, remember? So what is going to happen is this bond is going to break over here like this. So this falls out as your inorganic phosphate and this moiety becomes your ADP or adenosine diphosphate. Now this is breakdown. Right, so this is what? Catabolism. Energy is being utilized. Now, if both of them come together, if there is a Lyase reaction, both of them are ligating together, ADP and IP will combine to form and give you ATP. So this is anabolism. You are building up things, right? So from left to right is your anabolism. And your ATP hydrolysis is nothing but catabolism. Once again, we are revising the concept of metabolism. Now, What are the products that one would expect in these three major pathways? So glycolysis being the first one, also known as aerobic respiration, glucose is converted into pyruvate. So in this case, when glucose is converted into pyruvate, pyruvate itself is a product. After pyruvate, what else do we get? We get ATPs, a must, NADH2 and water molecule. Now, this pyruvate I told you is going to feed the next pathway in the TCA cycle. So, this is the connecting link over here. Now, this pyruvate, when it enters the Krebs cycle or the TCA cycle, it gives you the following energy-rich molecules: FADH2, NADH2, water, and carbon dioxide. Water and carbon dioxide, forget about them, they utilize in other physiological processes or released as a expiratory product. Then this NADH2 and FADH2, these are molecules of interest to us. Why? Because they are energy rich. So now what do I mean by NADH2, FADH2? That's given in your textbooks. They are the secondary energy rich molecules. So remember, as a one-liner or in your MCQs, the most energy rich or efficient compound happens to be your ATP, and followed by other class of compounds which are like ADP, FADH2, NADH2. So this F stands for flavin adenine dihydrogen. So if we put a phosphate, we'll say flavin adenine dihydrogen phosphate. Now, but here we are not taking the phosphorylation into account. So simply remember, FADH2 is your flavin adenine dihydrogen, and your NADH2 is your nicotinamide adenine dihydrogen. Okay, or it is also known as nicotinamide dihydrogen, nicotinamide dihydrogen nucleotide, and flavin adenine nucleotide, dinucleotide. So anyway you can name it, but the F and N stand for these two entities. So this nicotine comes from a B complex vitamin. It comes from a vitamin. So nicotine or niacin is termed as vitamin B3. So that is essential. We are coming to what nutrients are essential, why and when do we need them. So remember, your NADH2 will be requiring your B3 from the B complex group. So that is your niacin or nicotinamide. Now this nicotinamide or nicotinamide adenine dihydrogen feeds the ETC pathway and also the FADH2. Now NADH2 is more efficient because it is going to contribute to the production of 3 ATPs through the TCA cycle, whereas FADH2 is going to contribute to 2 ATPs. So remember the connecting links over here, class. In glycolysis, you have pyruvate which feeds the TCA. From the TCA, you have got FADH2 and NADH2 which feed your TTC, ultimately giving you energy. So when we say that one glucose molecule enters into the cell, it is completely oxidized to give you energy in the form of your pyruvate, acetylcholine, and ATPs. And of course, here and there, your water molecules will be formed, which are, as I told you, utilized into other cellular processes. So I hope this is clear to you. And remember, this is exclusively cytosolic, which means the conversion of glucose to your pyruvate will be taking place into your cytoplasm of the cell, and the further processes will be taking part into the mitochondrial organelle of your cell. Hence, mitochondria are at the most essential for any cell to function, and that is why mitochondria is also known as the powerhouse of the cell. So when you have got energy deficit, the cell looks up to the mitochondria. And hence, as I said, mitochondrial deficiencies or any diseases which lead to less number of mitochondria in the cell are prone to a lot of physiological disasters or a catastrophe. There can be energy catastrophe. What do I mean by an energy catastrophe? It means energy required is much more than what is being produced. So the cell cannot function normally. The life processes won't go on. And then you have certain mitochondria-based anomalies which are of clinical relevance. Let's not talk about them. This much of it is good for you. Score and study. Now just give me some time to prepare for the board because we are moving towards the last part of this chapter, that is mitosis and meiosis. So before we go on to our next part of cell division, there is a small point of how nutrients are derived and what are the different types of nutrients that our body requires for normal physiological functioning. So we require carbs. A lot of briefing has been given. That is why I excluded it from the board right now. We know carbs are a part of our. In the Indian staple has more of carbs. Your rice, chapati, bhakri are all going to be your sources of carbohydrates, followed by proteins. Now, what are the building blocks of proteins? They are these amino acids. So, amino acids are going to build up to form proteins. Now, proteins are present in your cereals, dal, etc. And the examples of proteins are, remember, your hemoglobin. I have on purpose given you daily examples or which you will remember even without remembering yourself. So, HP, right? All of us do a hemogram, especially children or when you are sick or old people regularly get their blood checkup done twice a year or quarterly. The doctors always look up for this HB. What is HB? It is hemoglobin. Now that justifies or tells you the amount of heme iron that is present in your blood. So it is then recommended if you have a low HB, you should eat iron-rich foods because iron is required for the oxygen transport, your circulatory system, right? So hemoglobin is an example of protein. Then keratin, which is present in our skin, hair, nails. Okay, so that is nothing but your keratin. And then there's one more, titin. If you remember titin, sugar, hemoglobin, and keratin are more than enough. Then, talking about lipids, what exactly do I mean by saying lipids? Why don't I simply call them oils? They are different from what are known as mineral oils. Okay, petrol, diesel, and all they are nothing but higher order alkenes. So, what our body produces physiologically are not alkenes; they are lipids. So, what do I mean by lipids? Lipids are formed when there is a specific bond formation between fatty acids and your alcohol. So, FA here stands for fatty acids. So this linkage leads to formation of lipids. And of course, cholesterol is a derivative of lipids. That is why we say there is blockage in arteries for people who have got a sedentary lifestyle or who eat more fat-rich foods. Then the examples of these are your hormones. Okay, estrogen, progesterone, etc. These hormones are also lipids in chemical origin or talking in terms of chemistry. So they play important roles in your body. So estrogen, progesterone, these are very important for your maturity in females and pregnancy, childbirth, childbearing, and testosterone, of course, for the male counterparts. So a lot of these hormones or steroids are lipids in nature. And the excess of them are stored in adipose tissue. So the process of synthesis of lipids for storage is termed as adipogenesis. Okay, and the storage sacs or the cells are known as adipose tissue. So whatever fat we accumulate around our bodies or thighs or in the back is all adipose tissue. When that builds up, you see a person is going plump, he is going chubby, he is not no more healthy. So make sure you keep your adipose tissue to check. Then coming to vitamins or vitamins as they are called, they are of two major types: water soluble and fat soluble. Water soluble vitamins are nothing but your B complex and vitamin C. Vitamin C is also known as ascorbic acid, which is present in high amounts in cabbage or cruciferous veggies. Then the fat soluble vitamins are your A, D, E, and K. They have got their names, but it's okay if you don't remember. For now, just remember vitamin A, D, E, and K are oil soluble or fat soluble, and B complex and C is water soluble. So the two examples that have been given in your textbook are about vitamin B3 especially. So if there is a printing mistake in some versions of the textbook, it is given as pantothenic or pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid, as the name suggests, panto means 5. So pantothenic acid is B5. Niacin or nicotinamide is B3. So nicotinamide, adenine dihydrogenase. Remember we saw it in the Krebs cycle that acts as a feed to your EPC. So that is why these these vitamins are very much essential for your normal functioning. Now, after we have seen this, there is a small point about anaerobic respiration or anaerobiogenesis. or anaerobiasis, as it is usually termed as. So what is anaerobic respiration? It is respiration occurring in the absence of oxygen. So certain organisms do not need oxygen to survive. Rather, I told you it's toxic. In the past chapter, if you have seen our videos, I had given you the example of Clostridium. So Clostridium tetani is a pathogen. It causes tetanus in humans. So that is an obligate anaerobe. So there are certain processes which actually require anaerobiosis to normally function. What are they? They are these two. So the first one is seed germination. When you sow seeds in the soil, there is very less spontaneous oxygen. So the seed germination is essentially your anaerobic respiration. Okay, there is no oxygen in the soil down there. Then, when it comes to lactate buildup in muscles, those of whom you run, the sports person, I keep quoting your example, or maybe you are coming to our classes over here on a bicycle. You would bicycle, right? You would cycle up and down, or whenever you're late, you paddle at a faster rate. So what happens? You get a slag in your thighs, or you feel that your thighs have become very heavy. You get a spasm or a sprain in severe cases. Why is that so? That is because the lactic acid buildup in your muscles. So when your muscle respires anaerobically, you get lactate buildup. Now this lactate causes you pain. It makes you feel heavy. And then it recedes. It is a reversible reaction. So when you sit idle for some time or when you go a little bit of stretching, you spread out your legs, this lactate is reabsorbed and then your normal aerobic respiration of the muscle continues. But otherwise, these two are examples of your anaerobic respiration. And what are the examples? Plus, many bacteria are known to survive anaerobically according to their obligate anaerobes. Obligate anaerobes means they are going to find oxygen toxic. They cannot survive in the presence of oxygen. That is why we term them as anaerobic organisms. What are the examples? Remember Clostridium, Mycobacteria, some of them cause deadly diseases like TB in humans. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, or also known as the tuberculosis bacilli, are responsible for a deadly disease which is still a pandemic. As a matter of fact, we have been very easy on the COVID front or the Wuhan virus infection because we could, So important thing about mycobacteria is that it is also known as tuberculosis bacilli. So this organism has still, managed to ravage havoc. And the WHO, that is the World Health Organization, has still not been able to contain or declare it as a new pandemic. It is still a pandemic and it is spreading in parts of Southeast Asia, especially the African subcontinent. Okay, so we could contain the COVID-19 or the Wuhan virus outbreak, but we have still not been able to contain this. It is that big. Okay, this was some extra knowledge to you people. And then there are methanogens. As the name suggests, these are methanogenic bacteria which produce methane. So when is methane going to be produced? That also is going to be produced under anaerobic conditions. Methanogens, again being obligate anaerobes, if you subject them to air like this, if I give you suspension, they are going to die because they don't have the machinery in the cell, the respiratory system, which can accept or accommodate oxygen. So oxygen goes and binds to their enzymes irreversibly, rendering them useless. And then there are certain anaerobic fungi as well. So the examples are given in your textbook. So one of them is this Neocalymastrix. So this is the fungi which is obligately anaerobic. So now let us go ahead and see what is mitosis and meiosis. So now let us see the major important processes which ultimately lead to cell division in a cell or living organism. The first, simplest and the foremost is your mitosis. So what do we mean by mitosis? It is a phase which is divided into 4 subtypes or 4 subphases. What are they? It is the first phase, that is the prophase, followed by metaphase, followed by anaphase, and ultimately a telophase. So let us see what are the subtle and gradual changes that occur in the cell in the respective phases. So in the prophase, what happens is there is condensation of nuclear material. So initially it exists as DNA bound to the histone, which are proteins, okay. So you cannot see anything distinct. So it starts condensing, it starts getting more dense and things start getting visible. I'll Before it is like a soupy broth. Okay, you cannot make out things. So it is the phase when condensation starts and your sister chromatids become visible. They're like very fine thread-like fragments. Here I have shown them distinct, but in the cell or in the specimen, they are not like that obvious. They're very thin. Now here for an ease of understanding and the visual aspect, we have shown them as sister chromatids, which are thin. And then the centrioles divide. So your centrioles will divide and they will move up to the poles, okay, for the polarity formation. Then at the metaphase, what happens is you have this very characteristic equatorial plate. What I have written here is the EQ plate. So the equatorial plate, or it is also known as the metaphase plate. So in this metaphase, you get spindle formation starting. So what are the spindles? So this is the spindle fiber. So you know this dotted thing that I am showing are nothing but the spindle fibers. So here will be your centrioles, okay, and then they will be radiating these spindles. Okay. So on these spindles will be held these sister chromatids. They cannot remain floating in the air, right? They need some assembly, they need some anchorage. So this anchorage is going to be provided by the spindle fibers that are formed between the two poles of the centrioles. So it is going to be like a network, okay, of spindles throughout the cell on which will be laid these sister chromatids as we have seen out here. And this is a very characteristic phase. It looks very beautiful if you do practicals now or in your 12th. Typically in onion root tips, you very beautifully see this phenomenon when you stay. So this metaphase cell looks very beautiful in which all the chromosomes are arranged at the equatorial plane. So after the metaphase, you have the anaphase that follows. So in the anaphase, what happens? Now here the sister chromatids are going to start dissociating. So from this center, they are going to separate, they are going to break. So if this is for the Ishwarengar chromatid or a chromosome. So okay, this is a chromosome, this is a pair of chromosomes. So now it will separate from this point. Now till this phase it was the metaphase. Now at the anaphase, they will start separating from the center. Okay. So they will move upwards and downwards depending on the polarity on which centriole is pulling them. So of course there are different types. There are chromosomes are acrocentric, metacentric, telocentric. Okay, depending on the position of this centroid. So anaphase is separation of these sister chromatids. So I told you this is going to break and separate. That is what is happening. And again, they are being laid on this network of spindles. They cannot be, just floating. It is not some sci-fi, Star Wars movie where you just do some magic and things will be going off and in against. So the spindles are very much essential for anchorage-dependent pulling, and it is very, very controlled energy requiring. A huge amount of energy is invested. Okay, cell division is one of the most costliest processes for the cell. Followed by telophase. Now, telophase is your decondensation, wherein again the chromatids or chromosomes will start dissolving. Okay, dissolving, and they will be more liquid, and you won't see them as distinct as they were in the initial two phases. The nuclear membrane is reconstructed. So, for this, the nuclear membrane has to be dissolved. It needs space. The centrioles are going to migrate to the two poles. So, during the telophase, there is nuclear membrane reconstruction. Also, the nucleolus reappears. So, what is meant by nucleolus? In the nucleus, also you have the nucleus. As in, not exactly nucleus, but a more condensed or a more central compartment, which is known as the nucleolus. Okay, in nucleus, we'll have so many things. You'll have proteins, you'll have filaments, which give you the architecture. You will have your transporters, okay, so on and so forth. And actually, within the nucleus also, the compartment that harbors the DNA is going to be your nucleolus, okay. So this nucleolus starts reappearing, and at this stage, we say that the karyokinesis is coming. What do you mean by karyokinesis? This is the karyotyping of the organism. Whatever, plant, animal. So here, your genes, your chromatids have divided successfully. Okay, hence we term it as karyokinesis. And when there is a septum formation or a notch formation, like even the First, your DNA divides, then your cell divides. What will happen if your cell divides before the DNA divides? You will get anomalies, which happens in cancer. So that is disastrous. That shouldn't be happening. So karyokinesis followed by cytokinesis is the rule of thumb, is the golden gate in which things should process and proceed. That is what is happening over here in the telophase. We are getting karyokinesis done first, followed by cytokinesis. Now, cytokinesis, there are two very distinct differences between an animal cell and a plant cell. So, in the animal cell, there will be a notch formation. It is like if you must have seen your moms and grannies knead dough, right? When they do chapatis or rotis. So, if you just pull that kneaded dough, how will it look? The animal cell looks very similar. It looks like as if you are pulling something semi-solid against each other. So, there is no clear-cut distinction yet. But in the plant cell, there is the septum formation. It forms a very distinct boundary in the between. Ye tumhara, ye mera, something of that sort. And then that is known as the cell plate. So in plants, the cell plate formation is very characteristic. Again, very beautifully studied in against root taste. You will see that when you do your practicals. But in case of animal cells, it is sort of pulling. There is no clear-cut distinction. Now, an extension of this is nothing but your meiosis. Now, meiosis, I told you, happens during capitalism, or it happens in your gametes. Okay, mitosis occurs in your somatic cells. This occurs in your germ cells, which are gametes. So then you would ask me, sir, mitosis. Then what about germ cells? Don't they have mitosis? They do have it. Hence, we divide meiosis into two phases. That is meiosis part 1 and meiosis part 2. So meiosis part 1 is your prophase from 1 to 5. So the prophase over here is very huge and large, which has and harbors a lot of homologous recombinations, and hence that is termed as the one of the longest or the decisive phase. So it has got 5 stages. So these 5 stages of the prophase becomes your prophase 1 of meiosis, followed by metaphase 1, anaphase 1 and telophase 1. I am not drawing a diagram over here because if you understand what is mitosis perfectly, you will get what is cell division. For your meiosis, please refer to your textbooks. The diagrams are shown in great detail along with the color distinction between sister chromatids and what do I mean by meiotic crossing movement. So I'll just show it to you over here. So let us say, so this is one X chromosome, like in the shape of an X. And this is one more chromosome which I am showing spiral, like fuselling pasta. Okay. So what do I mean by crossover is these two will be crossing. So what happens is now this chromosome number 1 and chromosome number 2. So this chromosome number 1 arm will become like this fusely from 2, and the rest portion will remain same. Then this 2 will be getting exchanged with 1, so it will have one arm state and the rest will be as this. So this is what is known as meiotic crossing over, which leads to a lot of genetic variety. Okay, and that leads to distinct personalities and individual ultimately. That is why we are so distinct. So you see the differences between twins, twin brothers and twin sisters, and then people who are siblings. They are different, right? So then this gives you genetically distinct individuals. So when we come to meiosis part 2, which is the ultimate thing, so meiosis part 2 is very similar to mitosis, in short mitosis itself. So that has again 4 phases, prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2 and telophase 2, after which there will be cytokinesis. So this gives you 4 N cells. So 4 N cells which are haploid in origin. Okay, in mitosis also you get haploid, but the beginning cell is diploid over here. So about this thing, it is 2N in the starting, okay, and it ends up with a N plus N. Okay, now of course there will be synthesis, the other halves will be synthesized, each cell will be diploid, otherwise it will be aneuploid or monoploid in number of, so that cell won't survive. So the remaining half of the DNA is synthesized. Even here, now here what happens is, it begins with a diploid state, but due to the special meiosis that is taking place, that is part 1 and part 2, you get 4 haploid cells. Okay. Now these haploid cells are genetically distinct from each other, and hence this process occurs not in your normal body cells but during gametogenesis or in gamete cells, which are your ovum and your sperms in the males. So with this, we come to an end of a pretty big chapter. This happens to be the first part of the second chapter, in fact, living organisms and life processes, part 1. I hope you had an enjoyable journey. See you in the next class with part 2. Till then, goodbye.